It was raining that night, thin, cold drops slicing through the silence. I parked down the street, watching the lights of my house blaze like a celebration of betrayal. Laughter spilled out through open windows. Wine glasses clinked, music roared. And there at the gate sat my father, Mr. Davies, shivering. Old hands wrapped around his knees, eyes glazed with disbelief. He looked up when I approached, soaked to the bone. "Son," his voice trembled, "why won't they let us in?" That one question, soft, innocent, laced with hurt, burned through me like acid. For years, I thought I had it all figured out. A loving wife, Clara, supportive in-laws, Mr. and Mrs. Wallace. A house I built from the ground up with every saved penny. When my mother died, my father became my only real family. I promised her on her deathbed I'd never let him live alone. So when my wife, Clara, suggested he move in with us, I thought, finally, someone who understands. Her parents, Mr. and Mrs. Wallace, visited often, too often. They had opinions about everything. How my house should look, what my father should eat, how I should behave. I mistook their meddling for care, but care doesn't come with conditions. It started subtly. My father stopped joining dinner. He'd sit alone on the back porch staring at the garden. I asked him once if everything was fine. He smiled weakly and said, "I think Clara's family does like old people around." I brushed it off until the day I came home early from work. I heard laughter in the living room. Clara, her parents, her cousins. Then I heard my father's door click shut. Moments later, Mrs. Wallace's voice carried across the hall. Finally he got the hint. "That man smells like the grave. Your husband is blind to it, but we aren't." Silence followed. Then Clara whispered something that tore through me. "He'll be gone soon. I'll make sure of it." I remember standing outside that door, fists clenched, heart pounding. I didn't confront them that night. I wanted to, God knows I did, but something inside me whispered, "Wait." From that night onward, I became a ghost in my own home. I smiled, nodded, agreed. But every word they said, every sneer, every slight against my father, Mr. Davies, I recorded it all. Hidden mics in the living room, cameras disguised as decor, every conversation uploaded to a private cloud. And while they were busy mocking the man who gave me everything, I began shifting the ground beneath their feet. The house, registered under my name, was quietly refinanced. I moved assets, changed insurance beneficiaries, created a trust in my father's name. Every cent they thought they'd inherit was rerouted. Then I waited. That night, the night of the party, they crossed a line I didn't think they dared to. My father called me, voice shaking. "They told me there's no room for me tonight," he said. "The guests won't be comfortable." He laughed softly, but it wasn't humor. It was heartbreak. I left the office without a word. When I reached the house, the gate was locked. He sat outside in the cold while they celebrated inside, drinking from my glasses, eating from my plates. And Clara? My wife danced barefoot across the floor that I had built for our future. That's when I decided it was over. I walked my father to the car and drove him to a warm hotel suite I'd booked earlier that week. "You'll sleep here tonight," I told him. "Tomorrow, things will change." He didn't ask what I meant. Maybe he already knew. The next morning, I walked into my house. The party aftermath reeked of arrogance and spilled wine. My in-laws, Mr. and Mrs. Wallace, were still there, half asleep on the couches. Clara looked up, startled. "You're home early," she murmured. "Not home," I said quietly, "just visiting." I placed a folder on the table. Inside, photos, recordings, financial documents, proof of their greed, their abuse, their manipulation. Mr. Wallace snorted. "You think this will scare us?" I smiled. "No, I think the eviction notice taped to the front door will." They laughed until my lawyer walked in behind me. Then the color drained from their faces. The house was legally mine. The trust one created ensured that it and everything within it belonged to my father, Mr. Davies. Now, they had 30 minutes to leave. When Clara realized what that meant, she broke. "You can't do this," she cried. "I can," I said, "and I already did." They scrambled, shouting, cursing. Mr. and Mrs. Wallace packed frantically, shoving jewelry into bags. Clara begged, screamed, promised a change. But I didn't raise my voice, didn't move an inch. I just watched. When they finally left, the silence that followed was heavy, cleansing. I called my father. Come home, I told him. And when he arrived, I handed him the keys. He looked at me, confused, tears welling up. This is your home, Dad. I said, always was, always will be. He tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. I could see the years of humiliation fade, replaced by quiet relief. Mr. Davies stood in the middle of what was now legally his living room, the keys still warm in his hand. The scent of stale wine and cheap perfume was heavy, a mocking residue of the party that had taken place while he sat outside in the rain. I don't know what to say, son, Mr. Davies finally managed, his voice thick with emotion. The relief I saw in his eyes was deeper than any thanks he could offer. Don't say anything, Dad, I replied, pulling him into a long embrace. Just go upstairs to your room. It's clean, it's quiet, and it's yours. For tonight, just sleep in your own bed. He nodded, clutching the keys. As he slowly ascended the stairs, I felt the weight lift from my shoulders, the weight I'd carried since the night Mrs. Wallace had whispered, "He'll be gone soon." I didn't stay long. The house, despite being legally his, felt tainted by their presence. I spent the afternoon at a nearby coffee shop with my lawyer, finalizing the details. The recordings, all the proof of their verbal abuse and financial plotting, were now securely held, ready for the divorce proceedings. The trust was ironclad. Clara and her parents hadn't just lost a house. They had lost the entire future they thought they were entitled to. The first call came that evening, a flurry of texts and then a block number. I let it go to voicemail. It was Clara, her voice raw, screaming one moment, weeping the next. "You lunatic! Where are we supposed to go? You did this on purpose. Mr. Davies doesn't even want a house this big. Give me back what's mine." She threatened me with every legal action she could imagine, but it was just noise. She didn't understand that I had spent months planning for this moment, gathering evidence she never knew existed. She had only planned on me being blind and complacent. The second call was from Mr. Wallace, surprisingly calmer, trying to use the old authoritative tone that used to make me back down. "Now listen here, son. We need to talk about this trust. This is a mistake. Clara is your wife. We are family. You can't let a temporary misunderstanding ruin everything. I'm sure we can work this out. For the sake of the money, I mean the marriage." I finally answered my lawyer's advice. "I'm not your son, Mr. Wallace," I said flatly, "and I have nothing to discuss with you. Any further communication must go through my legal representative. You have all the contact information." I hung up before he could respond. The silence felt powerful. The next day, I arrived with a cleaning crew and changed the locks. We scrubbed the house from top to bottom, not just to remove the mess, but to physically cleanse the space of their negative influence. Mr. Davies helped quietly, diligently, moving his few possessions back into main living areas. He no longer hid on the back porch. He sat at the dining room table, drinking coffee and reading the paper in the morning sun. He looked up at me as I taped the divorce papers to the front door, a final, echoing gesture of the eviction notice. "Where will you go, son?" he asked, not with worry, but with genuine curiosity. "I'm going to start over, Dad," I said, leaning against the door frame. "I've secured an apartment downtown. It's small, but it's mine, built only on my effort, not their expectations. The house is settled. I've kept my promise to Mom, and now I'm going to build a new life, one that's honest and free of hidden cameras." Mr. Davies smiled, a true, easy smile that reached his eyes. "That sounds like a good plan," he said. "Come for dinner every Sunday. You're always welcome here." I looked at him, the man who had lost his comfort, his home, and his dignity, only to have it restored by the son he raised. He was sitting in the sunlight, finally at peace. The loyalty I had shown him was not a sacrifice. It was a foundation of my own freedom. I locked the door behind me and walked away from the house, not with regret, but with the quiet satisfaction of a man who had finally settled his debts and, more importantly, chosen the right family. The apartment Clara, Mr. Wallace, and Mrs. Wallace had fled to was a cheap, Temporary rental booked by Mr. Wallace's cousin. A dingy, two-bedroom place that felt instantly suffocating after the luxury they'd grown accustomed to. The initial shock had given way to a furious panic that quickly curdled into bitter recrimination. "This is your fault, Clara," Mrs. Wallace shrieked, pacing the small living room. "If you hadn't been so greedy, if you had just played the loving wife a little longer, the house would have been yours. You were so sure you'd inherit everything." Clara was huddled on a threadbare couch, her designer handbag, now full of cheap hotel toiletries instead of jewelry, clutched to her chest. "Me? You two were the ones always badgering me, telling me to get rid of Mr. Davies, complaining about his smell, treating me like a fool because I hadn't pushed him out sooner." Mr. Wallace, usually the picture of collected authority, looked defeated, his tie loosened and his face pale. He was the one who had handled their family's meager finances for years, constantly boasting about their potential wealth, which was entirely dependent on what they could extract from others. Now, their financial reality was painfully clear. "The trust," Mr. Wallace muttered, running a hand through his hair. "It's all airtight. My contact at the bank confirmed it. He didn't just transfer assets. He liquidated almost everything and put it all under Mr. Davies' control. He even changed the insurance policies. We are left with nothing but what's in our bank accounts." For Clara, the loss was devastatingly personal. She hadn't just lost the house and the money. She had lost the life she believed she was owed. She made one last desperate attempt, driving to my new, small apartment downtown a few days later. The final confrontation. I was just getting home from the office when I saw her waiting by the lobby entrance. She was dressed impeccably, as always, but her eyes held a frantic desperation that hadn't been there when she was dancing barefoot in my living room. "We need to talk," she said, her voice dropping to a low, seductive plea. "I've made mistakes. I know I have, but we can fix this. We can get the house back, put Mr. Davies in a home, a nice one, I promise, and start over. We were happy once, weren't we?" I looked at her, truly looked at her for the first time in months, and felt only emptiness. "Happy?" I repeated. "When was that, Clara? When you were whispering that my father would be gone soon, or when you and Mrs. Wallace were laughing about how he smelled. That was the price of your happy life." I pulled out the divorce papers, which had been served to her earlier that day. "It's over. The only thing we have left to discuss is the legal end of our marriage. I have the recordings and the financial documents. If you contest this, I will use them. The media would love a story about a predatory family trying to exploit an elderly man. Do not make this harder than it has to be." Her face went from pleading to pure venom. "You think you've won? You're going to be alone, just you and your smelly old father in that dusty house." "I am already alone," I countered calmly. "I realize that the night I heard your voice through the door, but I am no longer blinded by you. And my father? He's finally home, where he is respected and safe. I didn't lose a wife, Clara. I shed a liability." I walked past her and entered the lobby, letting the heavy glass door swing shut behind me. She banged on it once, a sound full of rage and futility, then let out a choked sob. When I looked back through the glass, she was walking away, smaller and less formidable than she had ever seemed. I finally reached my small, quiet apartment. It didn't have a big garden or fancy fittings, but it felt clean. It felt honest. I picked up my phone to call Mr. Davies, not to check on the house, but simply to hear his voice. The only family I had left, and the only loyalty that truly mattered.